I'm Agent Ghost and welcome to the archives. Today I'm excited to bring you a new type of video that I haven't really done yet. There are some people that have requested this and thought about doing in the past, but yeah, it's going to be my settings that I like to use in the game. But before we get into the settings, I just also want to disclaim, like, take all my settings like my build videos, like a template, and please make any changes you want, especially these, like, when you get into game settings, they're very personal and just a personal preference. So if you want to make any changes or adapt it, please do so. Starting off with the audio settings, I have my master volume set to 80 just because it's a little bit too loud at 100 for me. I'm susceptible to noises, so I just have it turned down a little bit. I have music turned off completely because listening to the same music track repetitively gets old after you play the same game for a long period of time. Also, I get concerned about like copyright issues or things like that from my videos, so not a big deal. But I also have it turned off, so it's one less variable I have to worry about when I'm trying to listen to footsteps or things around corners or things like that. Sometimes the music can really get in the way with that. If you do like the music, I'd recommend putting it on 40. On the SFX volume, I have it to 75 just to turn down the sound effects like explosions just a little bit more, and then dialogue when I'm doing story at max, so I can hear the dialogue as clearly as possible. Mix type doesn't super matter. I've just always had it on home cinema and left it there. But headphones, if your headphones, TV speakers, and whatnot. I have mute audio when focus is lost, on, off. I have VoIP disabled. Group volume I have set to 0. I'd recommend setting it to 25 when you are using it, and I just use it depending on the situation. Sometimes I'm just having fun doing my own thing. If I'm in a countdown and people are like blasting music or things like that, I don't always want to be present for that, but I turn it on and off as needed. Proximity volume, this is like if you're in the dark zone and you run across people, so I like to have that on in case people are chatting or want to chat and things, so I can at least hear them. Moving on. Push to talk, yes. That's about it for audio. Moving on to the controls. This is the most personal part of all these settings that I would recommend, so please, again, use my controls as a starting point and adjust as needed. So I don't use mouse I play on PC, but I use controller, so can't really help you if you use mouse, but what I like to use going down to the gamepad, my look sensitivity is at 100, and the reason why it's at 100, what that affects is when I'm not aiming down sight. Like, this is not that. This is when you're not aiming down sight, that's the turn speed, and I like that to be able to, when I'm fighting like keyboard and mouse users, being able to keep up with them and react as quickly as I can, or make quick turns and things like that. So that's why I have that set to 100. When I'm down, and this is gamepad aim sensitivity, so that's when I'm aiming down sights. So, for example, when I'm holding my L2 button, when I'm doing this, I have it set to 80, and I still want it to be quick to react quickly, to be able to refocus on targets, but I didn't, 100 felt a little too fast for me. If you mess around with it and like 100, please do so, but I liked it about 20% a little bit slower, because when I'm aiming down sights, I just wanted to maintain some accuracy and stability, and it felt right to me. Another thing I'd recommend when you are adjusting your sensitivity, or if it's really low, like I believe default for me was 30 and 15 was default. If not, my point is it was much lower than it was, and I slowly like moved up to like 40 and 40, or even 30 and 30, I think is what I did, just to make it even. And then I kept moving up 10 after getting used to it until I got closer to the highest range. The minimal range I would suggest, because you don't want your sensitivity too low, again, because you want to be able to react to people quicker, is make it as comfortable as you can without being inaccurate, but be as quickly as you can at the same time. I know that that's easier said than done, but just keep, like I said, raising it by 10 or 5 as needed. And then when you get to that sweet spot, say like you like 75 and then you use it for a while and you're like, actually I want a little bit faster, go to 80. Or if you feel like you need a little bit lower, go to 70, you know. just those are the increments I would say is 5 to 10 until you find a sweet spot that you like. But I have 180, 100 for the game look sensitivity and 80 for the game pad aim sensitivity. Now for the scope sensitivity, I believe the default is 3. I have mine to 5. People, I've experimented with like 7 and 100 or 10. I mean, I'd recommend 5. That seemed like a good sweet spot in between both of them, but go with whatever feels right to you. Really experiment and figure out what's good for you, because sensitivity is just 100% preference. There's not one that's going to be better than the other overall. Gamepad vibration I've turned off. This is, again, if you like that feedback for yourself, that's perfectly fine. But sometimes when your controller vibrates, that can mess with you trying to aim while it's vibrating, while you're trying to use your joysticks and stuff like that. So it can make you a little less accurate. But if you're like playing PvE or not doing anything competitive wise, it really, I would say, just comes down to preference. If you are doing PvP, that is a setting that I would recommend turning off. But again, it's not a big deal, but that's why I would recommend having the gamepad vibration off. Now, my button layout is absolutely default. I haven't made any changes to my buttons. My left stick's dead zone is at 0 and right stick, but if you were getting stick drift on your joysticks, and what that would look like is, I'm going to simulate it, but when your hands aren't on the controller and you just see it like slightly turn like this, I'm simulating this. This is me actually moving the joystick. But if you're having that, you'd want to go into your settings, go down to the dead zone and turn it up to, like, for example, 5 or even 10. And that creates like an artificial dead zone. So that way it makes you like I'm having to move the joystick much farther than I did to actually move it like this. It creates a little pocket to hopefully help fix the dead zone. But you want it to be as low as possible without having stick drift. So if you can get it down to 0 or as low as possible, like say if you only need 2 and then the stick drift stops, then I would recommend that. Or maybe sometimes, depending, when you get to the lowest that it is, maybe sometimes go a bit higher. So 2 feels like that's the absolute lowest. Sometimes going a little bit higher can also help that, like by 1. So those are my recommendations on the dead zone. Now, I want the gamepad active. All of this is preference. I would recommend having 180 sprint turn degree on. And what that does is when turned on in the opposite camera setting, whoops, it is hard to read this, facing the character. Anyway, I would recommend having this turned on. I wish I could read that to better explain it, and my brain's kind of shorting out exactly, but just, it really helps with 180 degrees and turning. So just keep that in mind. I'd recommend that on. Moving down, auto look center off, enable auto run. I would say yes, tap automatically to move forward. So just allows you to toggle sprinting essentially. Parkour mode during gameplay while sprinting, no. Parkour mode during auto run, yes. Movement can exit cover on. I have that on, so that way basically when you're in cover like so, I can like hold back on the joystick to exit it. I don't have to press another button, which feels a lot more fluent and natural to me. So that's why I have that on. And then I have this turned off and a move around corner. So movement corner, around cover corner with button press. So I have this off. So that way, again, with the joystick, if I'm around cover, I can't super simulate that. But if I want to move around cover, I could just like hit forward if this was a corner, and then I'd go around it. And I'd like, again, that fluidity and natural feeling of using my joystick to do that versus having to press a button. It's just slower, so you react just slower. And then I have it too fast. I've experimented move around corner speed with slow and fast. This is really preference once again. Where slow, you are a bit slower and it takes longer for you to hold the joystick, while fast is almost immediate. Now, my only problem using fast, I still use it and recommend it, because again, faster reaction times, but there, fair warning, it is very reactive. Like sometimes I'm just trying to move to the right of the cover, and again, if I could go around it, sometimes just doing this, and then I would be going around the cover like so, like whoop, and I didn't mean to do that, and there's an enemy on that side, and I'm like, oh, hello enemy, I'm now on the same side as you. So that can be a little problematic. Just understand it's a bit touchy or oversensitive where you can sometimes go around with not meaning to. It doesn't happen as often anymore as I've gotten more used to it, but it can still happen occasionally. Toggle to sprint I have turned on. Combat roll on movement keys I have turned off. Hold to aim mouse. This is all mouse. Hold to aim gamepad. Yes, both these are yes. Aim assist on. I would highly recommend keeping this on because it just helps you have a little bit more aim assist while aiming. So it's not super like noticeable. There's a lot of games where they'll have aim assist and I'll try and like target one enemy and it's wanting me to like say go to that enemy when I'm trying to target this enemy. Feels very fluid, and it really only kind of you can feel it when you hold down your aim button. Like see it's going down to the middle where I'm trying to go to the head for optimal damage, but you can just get used to start middle and then just immediately raise your joystick and that will be fine. But that's when you really notice the aim assist. And then the same thing goes for the grenade. So, there we go. Grenade aim assist. Yeah, I would have that on. Cancel skill when aiming. Yes, so that way you can react quickly. Say if you have a skill out like decoy and you want to cancel it to aim and shoot down an enemy that's in front of you, highly recommend. Enter cover on long press. I have that turned off. Now, graphics is just really going to be preference, or video when we get to there, but for graphics quality, mine's custom, brightness. I'm not going to go over everything because yours might not match up to what I have, but I'm just going to quickly go over it and you can pause if you want to take a look at anything. The only thing I would recommend, I don't like depth of field, but other than that, like, again, this is all going to be depending on your system and everything. Same thing with video, so I'm not going to even go over that. Now down to UI. You can turn on enlarge UI, anchor UI. I would recommend turning off so that way you can go down here and hit customize UI. This is one of my favorite features in the entire game, or customize HUD. So we're going to go down to layout 2. You can see it's a bit different than mine. This is my default one I use, and what I like to use is I will use up on the D-pad is how it says cycle. You can use up and down, and then you can like take this for example, and you can use the L2 and R2 to scale it. I like to kind of scale it down so it's not as in my face to have more line of sight. It's the same thing with my XP bar. I like to scale that down, put it a little bit more in the corner so it's out of the way. My map I actually like to enlarge a bit so it's easier to see, and then again I like to put it to where the north symbol on compass part is still seen, and same thing with like the 40 degrees about there. Maybe bring it down a little bit more. There we go. And then my party I like to shorten and then put a little bit larger up in the corner. That's essentially just my HUD. Like that's what I like to do. So you can see it's very similar to if I go back and forth now, but this is my default what I'm using, and it's I highly recommend tune this to where you like. You can place things wherever you like. Some people like the map, for example, might like it on this side, and you can put the XP or vice versa. Like it really is preference, or maybe even put the map right here, or be crazy and put it in the center of your screen. So it's really easy. It's up to you. But I'd highly recommend mess with this and fine tune it, but also give yourself more space so that way it's not things like if we go back to here, look how default looks. Like it's just very apparent and taking up a lot of screen space where you could have that more open and be able to see more clearly. So that's what I recommend. Now moving on to the next settings. So after customize UI, button color mode, classic. Now here's another big important setting. Scrolling combat text. I'd highly recommend on floating. Random, sphere, and a 2D are essentially the same, but I'll show you what random looks like. So when I'm doing damage, for example, you can see my damage numbers are really small and just all over the place. It's really hard to track and see exactly what my damage numbers are doing. It's just insane. I I hate it, personally. I'm not a fan. And then if I go to 2D, it's basically the exact same thing, but it's larger numbers, so it is more apparent if you do like this for whatever reason. And there's not, like, again, at the end of the day, all these settings are just preference, but if you want to have it like I always do in my videos, I prefer floating, which is just this, where they're way off to the side in a straight line, so I can see very easily the damage numbers I'm hitting with this. It's very apparent, and that's why I highly recommend. Where is it? Did I skip past it? No, it's right there. Jesus. Scrolling combat text. So I would have that under floating, as the other two is way harder to keep track and pay attention. It feels like it's just more clutter on your screen versus helping. Now, for the raid speed run UI, I turn this on if I'm doing any raids and we're trying to speed run or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of that type of stuff, but it is handy, or if you're just running a lot of raids, just to have a little extra fun to see if you're going any faster or slower. Like, it can just be fun. So turn that on if you're running raids and feel like being able to keep track of your times. Active talents above crosshair, I have that yes, so that way it's above my crosshair to help better keep track of talents. And when they're active, loot beam visible, definitely keep this on, so that way, like, when there's a far loot beam or a legendary sticking, like shooting out in the air, you want to definitely keep this on so you can track your loot that much easier. Again, I haven't made any changes on like key mapping. Again, this is keyboard mouse, so it's all default. But this is where you'd go if you wanted to change any of your key binds in the game. Now, for gameplay, really preference, you can have Imperial, metric, so I have it to metric. It just way my brain likes to process and work and use that information. But again, if you use Imperial, go for it. It's very nice that they have this option depending on where you live in the world, and what works best for your brain. So I have mine on metric, but again, use what you are most accustomed to or would like. Show volt indicators. Yeah, I'd like to have this on. You can turn a lot of this off though. These indicators, again, it's just less clutter, and as I've gotten really used to the game, I really don't need these anymore, so I could turn them off, but I just like having that visual, like, yeah, press this button or reminder or things like that. So that's just preference. On call status, none. You can turn this on. I'm not going to turn it on right now because if I do, might need to go to someone and help them out and everything, and I have the rest of the video to keep going over. So, but you just turn this on if you want to do on calls to help other people and random people. I always keep it off unless I mean to do exactly that. I have auto hide HUD on, so that essentially what that means is when I'm not in combat or fighting or have my gun out, for example, or shooting after a while, it will automatically hide my HUD, which is really nice to deal with the clutter. Now, moving on to reticle thickness. I have mine up to 50. You can turn it down as much as you want, like even 25. I have mine at 50 just to make my reticle that much more apparent. It really works nicely for me because as I'm getting older, my eyes still working pretty great, but I just like it being a little bit more flushed out to be able to track and notice, because if I were to, if I were to turn it down to, say, like 5, the reticle outline, that like dark outline is not nearly as apparent, and the lines aren't as wide. So that's why I have that up to 50. The reticle opacity, that's if you turn that down to like 5, then it's going to be see-through almost, or 10. Let's just see what 10. Yeah, see, that's completely see-through. Can barely see it. So unless you want that completely gone, I would just recommend highly keep that at 100. But the reticle thickness, I would adjust to what you want. You could even turn up to 100 if you want. That's what 100 looks like. It's a lot. You can again see the lines and dot are a lot thicker, and it might be easier for some to have that turned up all the way or turned down significantly. Up to you. Let's go back to the 50. All right, and hints, I might turn this off, but it's nice to have if they come out with new features or new things to kind of keep it on. So, you know, if you're watching gameplay or like updates about that, you might know, but in game, sometimes the hints can be helpful if there's like new updates or patches or systems in place. That's why I just keep it on just in case, but turn it off if you're, know enough of the game and you don't want to see the same hints over and over again. Show damage numbers, definitely keep on. Show radar, definitely keep on. Show connectivity info, if you want, turn that on or off, up to you. Player level visible on. Show chat window, all those I basically have on, so, and are pretty self-explanatory. Language filter on. Menu strobe effect, yep. I basically have all of these on. Additional field vision, so this is the next thing I really want to go over. This is your field of view, so if I were to turn this down to 10, I have them both up to 25 maxed out for a good reason. I'll explain in just a sec. But if I were to do that, now my character, and while I'm aiming, it's even more zoomed in. And the reason why you want this zoomed out is that way you can have as much coverage or screen real estate as possible. Well, yeah. As possible to see enemies or people coming at you. So if I turn it back to 25, you can see I'm much more viewed out. I was like to here when I was facing this on that screen, and zoomed in, you can see my shotgun a lot more clearly on my back and stuff like that. It's just you want as much vision to see enemies as possible. Like if I was zoomed in all the way, I might not be able to see these enemies to the left of me on my screen, but because I'm zoomed out as far as possible, I can see these enemies type thing. So that's exactly why I would recommend having your field of view maxed out. Again, mess with it as you see fit, but highly recommend keep these maxed out. Enable signature weapon effect. You can turn this on or off. Motion sickness, and that's it there. Then we'll go down to accessibility, and that will be in language, I guess. Well, that's all self-explanatory, but let's go down to accessibility. So larger chat text, jeez, cannot speak, my apologies. Larger chat text I have on, and I'm just going to go through these really, so because they're self-explanatory, so turn them on and off as you see fit. All right, that's pretty much it. Going over all my settings. Please, everyone, take care. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for watching and be safe. Bye.